Good evening and welcome to this extraordinary meeting of Burnley Borough Council on the 4th of November 2020. All councillor members are present with the exception of Councillor Brindle, Councillor Chowdhury and Councillor Kennedy. Council officers present include Mick Cartledge, the Chief Executive, Lukman Patel, Chief Operating Officer and Catherine Warby, Head of Legal and Democratic Services. I'll now hand over to His Worshipful the Mayor of Burnley, Councillor Wajid Khan, Chairman of the Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, members, officers and members on the public watching on the live YouTube stream. Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of the Burnley Borough Council. Item 1 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay. No declarations of interest. Item 2 on the agenda, Mayor's communications.
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, public question time.
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda, items for this decision by the council. Can I point out to members that items for decision by the council are treated as motions. Once a proposal has been moved and seconded, members may speak once and for a maximum of 5 minutes. Members may then only speak again on an amendment. The executive minute extracts are with the reports and the decisions for council are highlighted in bold. Item 4A, Economic Recovery Growth Strategy. Councillor Asif Raja, will you please move your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would like to move the report. In doing so, I'd just like to say a few words. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone involved in producing this report, especially the officers and the previous executive, particularly Councillor Lishman, for the work that they have carried out on this strategy over the summer. The report is very thorough and comprehensive in outlining our key roles as a council on how we intend on rebuilding our local economy during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. We are currently in unprecedented times where the pandemic has affected everyone across the globe. Hard hit are our local businesses, where national and local lockdowns have forced a lot of businesses to close, and as a result, staff being furloughed and in worst case scenarios made redundant. The strategy sets out how over the next 5 years, the borough will start to recover from the impacts of the COVID pandemic and address some of the underlying weaknesses in the local economy, including low skill base, underinvestment by business in research and development, digitization and automation, and the longer term changes to our town centres that were already in train prior to COVID-19. The strategy focuses in particular on increasing business innovation, assisting businesses to respond to new business opportunities, both in short to medium term, as our world-class aerospace sector responds to projected downturn in the industry over the next 3 to 5 years, but also in the longer term to ensure that businesses are ready to adapt new technologies and respond to new opportunities for greener travel, clean energy and meditech. I believe as a council we should do everything in our power to help and support our local businesses, whether that is by lobbying the government for extra funding or by giving them the support and guidance on how to move forward. The report also highlights how we will be supporting our residents, particularly those who in the shorter term find themselves without work, and longer term, how we will raise skills levels to support a new higher value economy and to ensure that residents are able to compete in a labour market that will increasingly demand higher level skills. We are aware that previous recessions have had an unfair impact on younger people, and for this reason we have already established, in partnership with Calico, DWP and others, a youth employment and skills hub to target and assist young people who are not in employment, education or training. As a council, we will not be able to deliver the strategy on its own, so it is in everyone's interest to establish an economy recovery board, which will be bringing key partners from the public and private sectors that can respond to the challenges faced by businesses and workers. We are also proposing to allocate an additional £350,000 to the Business Growth Fund. In January 2013, the executive set out the Business Growth Fund, investing £1 million. Over the past 7 years, the council has invested £880,000 in supporting businesses, which has delivered £106 million private sector investment, creating 1,360 new jobs and safeguarding 300 jobs. With this additional funding, we will be able to provide support and modest financial assistance to assist businesses to adapt and grow. On a day when a large part of our economy has had to close yet again, it is important to note the inbuilt flexibility in the strategy and the recognition that, as well as acting to recover, we also need to be able to move back into a respond phase where necessary. This is exactly what has happened over the last few weeks. Firstly, in response to the Tier 3 designation, and this week in preparation for the new measures to be introduced later today. Our business support teams, together with colleagues in finance, are yet again busy administering financial support for businesses. This week, all businesses affected by the Tier 3 lockdown introduced on 12th of October have been contacted, and we will start to make the first eligible payments. We are also identifying the wider range of businesses that will have to close down as a result of the latest restrictions, so that we are able to pay them in a timely manner. We have also reinstated the multi-agency town centre recovery group, who will put in place plans for a safe reopening in early December. The new restrictions have come at a worst possible time for the retail and hospitality sector, and it is important that everyone plays their part, adhering to the restrictions so that we can get the pandemic under control. These are difficult times for everyone, but we must look ahead and respond efficiently and effectively to the immediate and longer term impacts of the pandemic, so that Burnley emerges, as it did from the last recession, as a stronger investment-ready economy. I move my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Asif Raja. Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you second that report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would like to say a few words, as I'm sure you'd expect me to. I'd like to start by thanking Councillor Raja for his kind words. And as he said, the work on preparing this strategy was begun during the last administration, and I must thank our Chief Executive, our Chief Operating Officer, and Kate Ingram in particular for the hard work that's gone into this document over some months and a number of drafts. I'd also like to thank Councillor Birtwistle and Gordon Lishman for their contributions. We started this work when it became clear that the pandemic was going to last some time and that there could be a major impact on Burnley's economy and our economic future. There was some scepticism about developing a strategy in the midst of the uncertainty, and when there were other demands on officers' time, including, in Kate's case, both the new student accommodation and the Pioneer Place development, and the major demands on Mick Cartledge and Lukman Patel in managing our immediate response to the pandemic and representing Burnley's views to county and to other bodies. But it was then, and it remains, a crucial action for this borough to show our residents, the rest of Lancashire and central government that we have a vision for an economic future for our town and for local people. Burnley did much better than many areas of East Lancashire in the past because our council looked forward and then set out to create the changes we wanted to see. In 1939, our town clerk went to London and set out to gain for Burnley the businesses that were being relocated from the southeast to avoid the forthcoming Blitz. Building on the town's history in textile engineering, a whole series of firms moved to the town. That stood Burnley in good stead in 1959-60, when the bottom fell out of the cotton industry. As we face the next round of big changes, we must build on our strengths in manufacturing and particularly in precision engineering, and go out and make our own future. Nothing, Mr. Mayor, stays the same. The big changes, which some are now calling the fourth industrial revolution, have been gathering pace for some time, and the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated many of them and brought forward changes that were already underway. Our town centre needs to change to reflect the massive changes to online delivery and shopping services. The demise of long established retail chains and their cuts in numbers of stores are also to be considered. And that's in addition to the increasing pressures on rent levels and business rates. The extent of Burnley's reliance on aerospace engineering is both a weakness and a strength, particularly when you look at the changes in that industry as a result of the pandemic and the extent to which our businesses make products for firms based abroad, particularly in the European Union, where we will be hard hit if we end up with a no-deal Brexit, which is looking increasingly likely, and the disruption and the costs that will follow from that. Add to that the changes towards a low carbon economy and hydrogen-based energy, and you can see both the extent of the threat to Burnley and the opportunities if we only can gear ourselves up to being part of the answer to those challenges. The challenge of a green economic recovery is no longer about the threat, only about the threat to our planet. It's now an urgent challenge for the future of our economic well-being. We have to adapt to survive, to build to our strengths, and to bring into the borough the new industries we need in order to survive and thrive. The board we are proposing should lead that process. The selection of a strong chair will be crucial, and we should encourage them to put their strongest emphasis on innovation in business and education for the skills that we need. I think the only thing in relation to that board that I would add is that I'm disappointed, as I know Councillor B. Foster mentioned at scrutiny, that we haven't got some representation from the voluntary sector on it, because their contribution to the town is enormous and should be part of the solution as much as helping the survival. Burnley's done a fantastic job in supporting our citizens during both the first wave and now into the second wave. And I had hoped that the community recovery strategy would also be before you tonight. And I hope that we will see it in the near future. It should work in partnership with this economic strategy. And as the former administration said in our agreed 10-point plan, both strategies together address the additional inequalities which have come in the wake of the coronavirus. That's inequalities in wealth and in income, and even more in health and in disparities of power. Those problems are likely to grow even worse in the face of a triple whammy of COVID, Brexit, and climate change. Our community hub has demonstrated how effective working between businesses, voluntary organisations, and public bodies has been. It's also highlighted some of those deeply entrenched issues and inequalities in our communities, including child poverty, debt, domestic abuse, and mental health problems. Working with our partners, we must tackle these and prepare our citizens to adapt and play their part in this economic recovery plan. Mr. Mayor, agreeing a strategy is only the beginning. It will only ever be as good as the actions that flow from it. I hope all councillors will support this ambitious plan, and in the words of the motto of Shuttleworth College, where I have the honour to be a governor, let's think big, chase dreams, and succeed together. Mr. Mayor, I second the proposal.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lishman. I'm moving on to the any member section. I have Councillor Johnston who wants to come in first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Interested what Councillor Lishman said about attracting companies into this area in 1939. One of them, of course, was Rolls-Royce, and look what's happened there. But Chair, the point I was going to make was to welcome what's been said about young people. You know, there's been 2 occasions when I've worked as an employment advisor in job centres. And on both occasions, one of the things that struck me was the number of clients I had who were first out of work in the 1980s, in the early 1980s, when, for those of you around, you remember the bottom dropped out of the economy. And these people have had employment problems and employment difficulties throughout their lives because their early life was spent on youth training schemes, all the other things that were put in place in the 1980s to help young people. And the effect of not having proper jobs early in their lives has blighted these people's subsequent careers. And frequently there are people, good people, who want to work, but didn't have the sort of track record which made it possible or easy to find them work. You know, when the bottom drops out of the economy and young people are hit hardest first, it wrecks their lives. That's no exaggeration. And I do hope that we can try as much as we can to save this generation of young people. Now, the generation that I dealt with, many of them are now coming up to retirement. They haven't enjoyed the quality of life that I certainly have enjoyed and many members here have enjoyed. And that's a sad reality of what happens when the bottom falls out of the economy to a group of people who basically are the wrong age at the wrong time.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson, for that, and thank you for being concise. I appreciate that. Can I bring Councillor Fewings in, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm broadly in support of this strategy. I want to extend my thanks also to the officers and to both the outgoing and new administrations. Just one comment really that I think we need to minute is that in relation to recommendation 5, that is obviously using climate emergency working group funds when a climate emergency working group has not been given resources to actually meet in the last 9 months. So it should be noted that no information has been given to the members of the climate emergency working group as to decide whether this is a good project and a good use of those funds which were put forward. And I just think we need to be honest about if we've changed our mind on the climate emergency motion that we passed, then you know, let's be clear about that. I see that council leader is looking to speak, so I hope we'll get some sort of support for the climate emergency that we passed and some good words of support there. But let's also think about action going forward, because I think action speaks louder than words. I think in terms of the steps we are taking in relation to the green economy, I'm obviously really pleased to see us moving in that direction. The Green New Deal, which is essentially what we need to see happen in this country, started in 2007. So we're 13 years behind the sort of thinking that we need here. So whilst it's great first steps in the right direction, we've got a lot of catching up to do. And again, we will be judged by our actions rather than our words in relation to the transition to a green economy and also a just transition for workers, which you know is a really important factor in the Green New Deal. I just want to make a couple more points in relation to the green sector, because I think there's a little bit of a problem of just referring to it as a sector and not really understanding what it involves. So there's a lot of diversity in jobs there, which is what we need. We're obviously suffering from failure to diversify in the past. So that could include electric vehicles, green hydrogen, not dirty hydrogen, renewable energy technologies, wind, hydro, solar, decarbonising heat, decarbonising transport, decarbonising housing, and decarbonising technology. So these are massive sectors where we can bring really high skilled jobs locally, and we really need to be investing in them. I support this report and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fings. I was just surprised you didn't mention waste to energy there as well. In terms of gasification, that's a really good, interesting one as well. Good point as well. Good points. Appreciate that. Can I bring the leader of the council in, Councillor Mark Townsend?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and be succinct. I agree that this is a comprehensive and timely piece of work, much needed, and I'm really pleased that the previous administration had put a lot of thought and effort into this, and it shows. And it's really good that we've got this on going through council so quickly. I just want to make a couple of points on what Councillor Lishman has said and Councillor Fewings. Regarding the community strategy, we do agree that the community strategy does need to come forward soon. I think we just thought that it was a little bit too early in terms of where COVID was actually going, in terms of sending a message, in terms of recovery, and really we're right back into a response phase again. But we take fully on board that we do need to bring it forward quickly, and we do need to make sure that they're integrated and coherent strategies going forward. And I look forward to working on a cross-party basis on getting that in place. I just want to add that I had a meeting yesterday with Steve Fogg, the chair of the Lancashire Enterprise Partnership, who took a great interest in the strategy that we've developed, and certainly once we've passed it, would like to see a copy of it. Because as we know, we passed a motion last week, and he was extremely thankful to the council for this around the aerospace recovery plan, and demonstrating our commitment through that motion last week. And during the meeting, we didn't just discuss aerospace. We talked about retail, the changing of town centres, which I'm sure we're going to come back to again tonight, hospitality and tourism, new technologies, and supporting startup and incubator businesses. So it was really encouraging in that meeting with the LEP chair that there was a high degree of synergy in terms of what the LEP's thinking has been and what this council's thinking has been over these last few months. And I think it's put us in a really good place to work with the LEP to basically make sure that we can go forward with confidence. I suppose the key thing is that we don't run away with ourselves. Ultimately, at this point in time, we've got to keep our businesses operating. And I'm pleased with what I heard from Councillor Roger in terms of us starting to get the business grants out. And we need to get those out as quickly as possible to make sure that our businesses can survive through this. And it's all about retaining capability, capacity and skills so that we're ready for the future. Just coming back to the green economy, I note what Councillor Fewings said. I think it's really quite exciting that we are starting to put some money now behind some initiative for the low carbon accelerator pilot, working with the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre, amongst others, pooling resources to have a demonstrator scheme in Burnley, providing advice to businesses on adopting green technologies. And let me assure him that we have right at the heart of everything that we do to ensure that climate change, single-use plastics, the environment is at the heart of everything that we do going forward as Burnley Council. I know we have a lot to learn, as you just pointed out. There's certain things we probably need to get a lot better at, but I look forward to working with you to ensure that we can get as much of what you want into future policy, obviously finances permitting, in terms of the climate going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Can I just bring in Councillor Gordon Lishman, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I only wanted to add a couple of points, but particularly to underline Councillor Johnston's comment about the generation of the 1980s. I was also working on those programs, and you can see the so-called scarring with people of that generation, as we now are beginning to see from those who lost out in the financial crash of 2008. people who come into the labour force or who are due to come into the labour force at those times are disadvantaged for the rest of their lives. That leads on to a further point, which is that if there is going to be significant investment, as there was in the past, in both job creation and the development of training programs, the organisation and management of those programs is crucial. And that, it seems to me, is an area where Burnley Council might be able to play a significant role in enabling those developments to happen. I would also underline the comments that have been made about the town centre and the development. As part of that, I just want to draw attention again to the importance of developing some of the sub-centres within our town, not just Padiham, but also Rosegrove, Halsyke, potentially parts of Cone Road, parts of Padiham Road, where there are significant problems with large roads going through the middle of them, and actually thinking about how we turn those areas into new retail centres is going to be quite important. The final point I want to make, though, is just to understand that, like other areas which have had a high incidence of COVID, we're now moving on from the point where we see a lot of virtually lunatic deniers of COVID to the point where we are going to have to come to terms in our town with quite a lot of bereavement and loss, which is going to be heightened by the fact that people haven't had an opportunity to grieve properly, they haven't had the opportunity to come together with families and others. That will affect people's health in the future. The challenges around lockdown or being isolated will affect people's health in the future. The same also applies very much to the results of unemployment, which is already beginning to happen. And in those circumstances, I think it's very helpful that the new executive has an executive member responsible for health and well-being, and indeed is the deputy leader of the council. And I do hope the significant part of the integrated development of economic and social recovery plans will be to pay attention to some of the health impacts of the problems we're seeing, and to involve the council and others in finding effective ways of meeting those challenges.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lishman. We will now go to the vote.
Can I? Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I didn't see your hand up. Come in. Yeah, come in. Please go. The floor is yours, Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I'm really sorry, but I don't know how to do all these chat things, so apologies. I just really want to just underline what Councillor Margaret Lishman said, really, around the role of the voluntary community and faith sector. It is acknowledged in the document around how they are really worthwhile partners and stakeholders, and yet under the actual Economic Recovery Board, only the public and private are mentioned to be able to sit on that board, and yet for me, the community and voluntary and faith sector are often the first places where people who are on the margins start to build their self-confidence and raise their aspirations in order for them to actually re-enter the job market. So I'd really ask that the role of the voluntary community and faith sector be strengthened in this document, and that they be treated as an equal partner alongside the public and private sector, and as a result of that have representation on the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Foster. I'm sure the authors will look at that and implement that. Can I just now move on to the vote, please? Electronic vote will be conducted. As you always know, the message will appear on your screen. Please go fire away with your submission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hopefully all members can see the poll now on this screen. If anyone's having any problems, we can take those verbally and add them in manually once the poll's closed.
If anyone's having problems, please let us know now.
Mr. Mayor, it appeared for a fraction of a second, then disappeared. So, but if you record my vote as for the motion.
Okay, Chris, can you make a note of Councillor Baker's vote, please?
I will do, Mr. Mayor, yeah.
Anybody else? Any other member? Okay. Just have a look, Chris, if everyone's voted.
Yeah, at the moment, 39, 40. There are 3 members who've yet to vote, as far as I can see. Is anyone having any problems?
Please do name them.
I can't, unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, until we actually close the poll and see the results.
I'm going to say name and fame them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are any members still having any problems? Then there are 2 members still now left to vote. We've got 40 votes plus Councillor Baker's verbal vote. That's 41. And there's 43 members in the meeting.
You're not including Mick and Lukman, are you?
No, no. But if I close the poll, Mr. Mayor, we'll go through it, and if anyone is having any problems, I will.
Yeah, let's do that. We'll pick up anybody's vote who's not voted. We'll ask them manually if they want to vote. Maybe they want to abstain. I'm not sure. Yeah, if we could close the poll.
Close it now, and it just has an automatic timer, Mr. Mayor. It's just 15 seconds, and it'll close. Share the results.
Everyone's got the iron results today, haven't they?
Right, so I'm just sharing the results. I think perhaps there is 1 member still to vote, but if I go scroll down, if members can just check they have voted, and if not, they can confirm their verbal vote.
Councillor Foster hasn't voted.
Okay, B, can you confirm your vote to me, please?
Oh, B's just said that she's been kicked out of the meeting. I think she's back on now. That might be why we've not got her vote.
Okay. Councillor Foster, are you there?
She's now saying that she is struggling to unmute herself.
Right, okay, just bear
But
with me.
she's 4.
She is 4. Can I take that chair? It's just difficult to go.
Yeah. Can you say that again, B?
All right, I'm fine. I'm here now.
Or
I've no idea what's happened. I lost you all together, and I'm 4. Sorry.
Okay, noted. Thank you, B. So I will just scroll down to the second half of the poll. Are there any members who have not voted? I think we've got everyone's vote now with the 2 verbal votes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Shall we move progress on that? Let's have a look. So that's it. So that
clearly that's passed, yeah.
Item is carried. Thank you very much for that.
No,
we can now move on to item 5 on the agenda. Questions.
None have been received, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mick. Item 6 on the agenda, exclusion of the public. For members of the public watching this meeting will now go into private session following a short break at the end of this meeting. The adjourned meeting from the 29th of October, which was spectacularly finished, will be reconvened, and outstanding business from that meeting will be carried out. For those watching on YouTube, the reconvened meeting will be a continuation of the current stream you have been watching, so you don't have to log on to any other link. Just stay put. Councillor Mark Townsend, would you please move the exclusion of the public?
I move exclusion of the public, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Liam Payne, will you second that?
I second that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
If there is no dissent, the public shall be excluded. There's no dissent, so I'll wait for yourself, Chris, to let me know when it's private.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We'll just pause the stream now, and Mark. Good evening. Welcome to the reconvened meeting, the adjourned council meeting from the 29th of October 2020. All councillors are present with the exception of Councillor Chowdhury and Kennedy. Council officers present include Mecca Cartledge, the Chief Executive, Rutman Patel, the Chief Operating Officer, and Catherine Warby, Head of Legal and Democratic Services. I'll now hand over to His Worshipful the
Excuse
Mayor.
me, I'm here and I wasn't here.
Councillor Wajid Khan, Chairman of the Council.
Excuse me, I'm here and I wasn't here.
Noted that you are here, Councillor Roper. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, and welcome to the reconvened meeting from the 29th of October. My first apologies for the executive members who were an item 8 going through the report. So not long to go, colleagues, members, and welcome back all, but everybody watching on YouTube. As far as I can remember, huge apologies to Councillor John Harbour because we were at the observation stage in Councillor Harbour's report on housing. So I will continue. There was a couple of observations, and it's only fair that I ask people to, if they've got observations, please observe on Councillor Harbour's report now. If there's no observations, I should give you, if you want to say anything, because you didn't get a chance to conclude on your remarks on your strategic report, Councillor Harbour, if you want to say something, your floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe the last observations were about Calico and its relationship with the council. And I think, if I remember rightly, we are talking about bringing Calico in to make a presentation to the council. I think that would be the right area where to raise these concerns and not at this full council meeting. I think it's only fair that if we are going to say things about Calico, there should be somebody there from the company who can answer these concerns. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harbour. We will move on to the next report. The remaining reports are Executive Member for Community and Environment, Councillor Frasia Banwar, and the Executive Member for Economy and Growth, Councillor Asif Raja. I will take them reports in order. Any questions on the report, and the Executive Member will respond to them questions, and then the same procedure for observations. Can I remind, please, people, quote the page number and reference when you're asking or observing. Please be concise with your questions and observations. So, Councillor, Executive Member for Community and Environment, Councillor Frasia Anwar, will you please move your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move my report, and in doing so, I'd just like to say a few words. And I'd just like to, first of all, thank my predecessor, now Deputy Mayor, Councillor Townley, for all the hard work she did with this portfolio. I'd like to say, you know, in terms of a lot of the work that's gone on in the report, that it's all my work, but it's not. It's a lot of hard work and effort. And I did work very closely with Councillor Townley, particularly on the work that was done with the community testing sites that we led on as a district council. And I know how much work and effort she put in as part of that. So it's only right that I thank her for all the work and effort that went into that. As well as that, I'd like to say thank you to all of our members of staff, those that have put the report together, but also more importantly, members of the staff from the street scene team, from environmental health, licensing, and the engineers in particular. And the reason I say that is because more often than not, they're our frontline staff, and they're the officers who, throughout this pandemic, from the word go, have been pulled here, there, and everywhere. And they've just got on with the job and done whatever has been asked of them, and they've been absolutely fantastic. And having worked with them very closely on the sites and in our response as a town to the pandemic, I think it's only right that it's noted that we're grateful for their efforts and all the work that they've put in. I move my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anwar. Any questions for Councillor Anwar? Please let me know now on the chat, or just give me an indication. Okay. I'm just checking now.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, my laptop was just buffering. No one's requested to speak at this point, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, then that means we can move on to any observations to Councillor Anwar's report.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Foster?
I have an observation.
Yes.
Which won't come as any surprise to anyone in the council. On page 169, PF3, I'm delighted to see under the digital strategy that I'm glad to see that people like myself who find IT a challenge are not being forgotten. And I'd like to say, long may it continue, please. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll have another observation. Thank you, Councillor Foster, for that contribution. On that very important point, I remember when we introduced iPads into the chamber, I never forget the facial expression of Councillor Townley when I told her we have moving to iPads in the chamber. I can never forget that. But anyway, we've got Councillor Anne Kelly, your observation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 166 about the COVID powers. Many of you will know that I've had the coronavirus and been extremely poorly. I was asked at the beginning if I would put together a short video to go on the council website, to go on Facebook, saying, explaining how horrible it is, how poorly I've been. I have absolutely no idea where I picked it up. Everywhere we've been, we've sanitised, we've worn masks. We haven't even seen our grandchildren or anything like that. No idea where we got it, but I've been extremely poorly. I was asked if I would do some kind of short video to go onto Facebook and on the council's Facebook to explain how horrible it was and try and make people understand. I put it on Facebook, a very short one, for about half an hour. Within half an hour, I had 50 or more horrible, nasty remarks about it, saying that it's all untrue, it's a lie, it's a plot by the government to cull older people, I should stay at home and never go out. It wasn't just a few people, and I took it off immediately because it was just so horrible. But somehow, this message about how dangerous it is and how important it is for people to follow the guidelines, that message is absolutely not getting through. The second thing is about the track and trace. What an absolute waste of time that was. I spent an hour and a quarter on the telephone with a lady asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions about whether I held my grandson's hand to cross the road when I picked him up from school and was told I shouldn't have done. I was an hour and a quarter on the telephone. I had to stop. This is when I was at my worst. I had to stop 3 times and ask her if I could just wait for a few minutes until I had enough breath left to speak. And she said, yes, she'd give me 3 minutes and virtually timed it on a stopwatch. The whole track and trace system was absolutely useless. One thing, I took my grandson home. I was asked which school he went to. They contacted his school and told him he had to isolate. Did you take the child home? Yes, of course I did. I did not leave him on the doorstep. I took him into the house. The child was told he can't go to school, but my son, who was there when I took the child home, wasn't told to isolate at all. The whole track and trace system was absolutely ludicrous. The other thing is, they always ring people on their mobiles. And they say, are you at home? And of course they all say, yes, of course I am. They've absolutely no idea where anybody is. So I think there's 2 parts to it, really. I think we've got to try and do something about the track and trace. But secondly, we have got to try and make people understand the seriousness of what is happening, just how many people are poorly with this and how serious it can be. I also felt extremely insulted by people who say that, the over 60s, we're useless, we could just stay at home. And it makes you feel absolutely valueless. That anything I do is unimportant, any council work, anything I do for my community, for my village, for my family, for my grandchildren, absolutely unimportant. You can just stay at home because you don't matter. If you get poorly, well, it's just tough luck. And that's something that's coming across all the time, particularly on social media. I've no idea. I didn't put it as a question because I've absolutely no idea what anybody could possibly answer. But it's clearly got to be looked at.
It's an important observation, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, it's really important to hear what you said there. Councillor Frasia Banwa, you've got 2 observations. Would you like to respond to them?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the first one, with regards to Councillor Foster with the digital strategy, I think one of the things that I've been trying for years being a close friend of Councillor Foster, is trying to get her to embrace technology, but it's always been a struggle. But I will get her onto WhatsApp if I can, whenever we get the opportunity. But joking aside, I think one of the things that that's important as part of this is that those of us that have used the council tools that we've got in terms of reporting some of the things that we want to report to the council, sometimes it can be a struggle. And again, it's something that we're working really hard on, and a group will be put together to get ideas to make sure that we can make it as simple as possible, so that not just councillors but members of the public can report incidents, issues to us as quickly and as smoothly as possible. It's absolutely vital that we get this done. And we have invited Councillor Foster, Councillor Townley are invited to be a part of that group as well as others. So that is something that we will ensure happens. With regards to the COVID powers and Councillor Kelly's concerns, I take everything on board and agree with a lot of what she said. But I think the key thing to note here is that as a district council, as a local authority, in terms of our response to COVID, I think it's in the way that our staff have responded and we've responded has been second to none. The issue here is the track and trace and Serco and the organisations that are involved in that, and that's something that's a problem nationally, which I'm sure everybody is fully aware of, and it's sad to hear the experience that what we want to do is for those who don't believe that COVID is real, we want to be able to share those messages so that people know that it is absolutely real and that it is life-threatening. And social media can be a fantastic tool, but it also can be something that can be really harmful as well, and which is sadly has been Councillor Kelly's experience of it. But in terms of the key messages, I think one of the things that everybody will be aware of as a council through Burnley Together, working with our voluntary community faith sector, and particularly with our places of worship and our community leaders out there in the communities, one of the things that we're trying to do is ensure we get those key messages out for people to carry on and continue. And that fatigue is setting in, but we've got to continue and persevere with that, because we've got to win this. And all of us have got to pull together on it. So, like I said, I take on board all in terms of the observations. But as a town, if it had been us in charge of track and trace, with the way that we've behaved and done, it would have been a world-class system. But sadly, we're not in charge of it.
Premier League system. Thank you, Councillor Anwar, and appreciate your comments about this new digitalisation group, which I hope one day Councillor Foster and Councillor Townley can lead that group. With experience. I shall now move on to the next executive report.
Chair, I think Councillor Baker has raised a request a little earlier for an observation, perhaps.
Is that, okay, we'll take one last observation, please, Councillor Baker.
Yeah, it was just to ask Councillor Anwar to thank his staff on my behalf. I raised an issue last night about taxis and things like that, and they've republished the guidance asking them to ensure passengers wear masks and things like that. And it's like Anne says, basically, it's everybody pulling a little bit together. It's not massive changes, but I had to smile a little bit, Mr. Mayor, in the fact that when I was about 15 and 16, if somebody said they were 50-year-old, then to me they'd had a damn good innings. What they bothered about, you know. So now it's when I'm 73 now, but I still feel as young as I was 15, unfortunately. So I do apologise to all those I said that about when I was 15. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I remember when you were 15.
Yeah, well, you were joined in with me, Andy.
It's never too late to reflect on some of your experiences when you were younger. Councillor Anwar, very quick. Do you want to say a very quick contribution to what?
Yeah, I recall from the meeting that was adjourned. That was an issue that was picked up by Councillor Baker, and straight away the officers have got onto that, and they've sent out those key messages via the licensing. And the response from the staff right the way through, like I said, has been absolutely fantastic. So, yeah.
Okay. The Executive Member for Economy and Growth, Councillor Asif Raja, will you please move your report? You've been slightly busy tonight, but can you move your report again?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do move my report, and in doing so, I'd just like to say a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to thank all the officers from Economy and... Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, but I've got Councillor Baker needs to use the mute.
Sorry. I'll just start again. Yes, I moved my report. In doing so, I'd just like to say a few things. First of all, I would like to thank all the officers from Economy and Growth Finance and Liberator for processing and distributing the COVID grants to applicants throughout the borough. And I know they're doing a fantastic job now with the Tier 3 grants. I would also like to thank Mr. Mark Crabtree for his contributions as chair on the Burnley bondholders and wish him all the best for the future. And I move my report. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Asif Raja. Are there any questions to Councillor Raja? Okay.
None received at this point, Chair.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Are there any observations to Councillor Raja?
Again, none received at this point, Chair.
Well, Councillor Raja, you've had a busy evening tonight, so you're spared from any question observation. I just want to give you a last message before you go, council members, and to everybody watching on YouTube. Tonight is the second lockdown. I urge you all to follow the guidelines. Let's all work together. Your sacrifices are hugely appreciated. And I'd also like to say what we heard. I'll bring you back in a second. But Councillor Anne Kelly's moving contribution this evening is a reminder that COVID is real there. And let's show some respect and love towards people that have served not just the town and work-wise as an excellent teacher, but also as the mayor of this town. Let's have a kinder way to approach things. I urge you all to follow the government guidelines. It's so important. This is real. I know people that have passed away, friends of mine, and I know a lot of members I know people. So all together, Burnley together, one Burnley, let's make sure we can do our bit, and hopefully the more we work together, the quicker we can get back to some kind of normality. So that's my message for tonight. And I think Lukman Patel, our Chief Operating Officer, wants to come in on a last final contribution.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I've just not had the agenda until later on today. One item which appears to be missing is questions under Standing Order 10.2. You just need to ask the question of the Chief Executive, so apologies, it's not on your script.
Are there any questions under Standing Order 10, Mr. Chief Executive, Rule 10?
None have been received, Mr. Mayor.
Well, if that is the case, good night and God bless. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.